when I did executive coaching, I had a couple of clients who knew each other start to call me the Black Widow because they were like, if you work with her, you'll quit your job. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm Rodney Evans, and that is Sam Spurlin.
Hello, Rodney Evans, Sam Spurlin reporting for duty.
In his Ready sweatshirt, like the good corporate citizen that he is. I love it. Welcome back to At Work with the Ready. This is a podcast about modernizing organizations as the future of work meets the present moment.
And as you know, each episode, we turn our attention to one common organizational pattern that we think is worth digging into. We pull it apart like cheesy bread, and then we propose solutions for what to do instead.
Did you know my favorite food of all foods is mozzarella sticks?
Mozzarella sticks are pretty great. Have you ever had smažený syr in Czech Republic? Do you know what smažený syr is?
No.
Picture a patty of mozzarella stick on a bun with mayo. Or you can do whatever toppings you want, but it's basically a patty of mozzarella stick. And I ate at least 2 every day for like the month that I lived there. It was amazing.
That's fantastic. And that, folks, is the quality content that you keep coming back here for. Not really. This week we're going to talk about something else. I'm going to just think about that food.
Yeah, you're
while
welcome.
We're talking about, what are we talking about? We're talking about why people leave. We never talk about turnover on this show. We just assume that everybody stays everywhere forever. But actually we know from our clients, who are not us, that they worry a lot about talent and retention and turnover and great people leaving. And we also know that the work that we do can sometimes provoke people to have epiphanies about their lives and purpose. And so we thought it would be really fun to chat about that today.
I was just going to say, I was wondering if we were going to talk about that thing that you just said at the end at some point, and you just front loaded it, which I think is great. And I've started contracting with clients around this. It's a thing to be aware of as we embark on this work, that you are going to awaken things inside of your best people. And if you cannot help them fulfill their dreams at work, they may leave.
Yeah.
And
once they wake up, they're going to be cranky. like how everyone is when they get woken up, and they're going to be looking around, and then you're going to have to do something to settle them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
But before we do all that, let us check in.
Let's check in. And we're gonna do a truly orthogonal check-in, nothing related to the topic, but I've enjoyed it today. How do you visualize?
Do that so that you could use the word orthogonal?
No, I just thought of that in the moment because I'm a wordsmith. How do you visualize the shape of a year?
For some reason, I was like, I want to call you a word pirate now. The shape of a year. I think of the shape of the year as being a loop, an oval loop, where January is at the top and July is at the bottom, and spring is coming down the right side of the oval and fall is going up the left side of the oval, like a cycle.
Holy shit.
That's how everybody does it, right?
I'm holding up almost exactly what Rodney drew.
It's almost exactly like that, but it's a pear.
Mine is more of like a teardrop shape, where things are more accelerated and kind of the winter months are kind of around the top, but the summer is more spacious at the bottom. But it's basically what you just described there, which is pretty wild, right?
Wait, unless this is just how everyone thinks about it.
Well, no, I have data for you, because I've used this check-in question 2 other times today. In both situations, it was a group of 3 in which I was one of the 3. And in both meetings, we had the exact same pattern, which is one person said oval, one person said something about a line, and one person, me, had the thing that I just showed about the teardrop being kind of oval shaped, but not. Yeah, so you and I are the same on this, I think.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, that's such a good check-in question. I love it. I have random asides, but I'm not going to do them right now.
No, we're going to do it.
What I am going to do is ask our listeners for a review, please, on Apple Podcasts, 5 stars only. We really appreciate it. A lot of you have been doing it. I'm too scared to read them, but Sam and Jack do. And it's really, really nice when you guys leave us reviews.
Yeah. And in this week, the review, you should leave your answer to the question of, well, how do you visualize a year? So that we know after which episode you left a review. That'd be fun, right?
That would be so fun. Oh, also, this isn't in the notes because Jack is slacking off. We're on Instagram now. I don't know our handle, but I
believe
bet
it's at
Jack
work
will
with
put it in
Reddy.
the show notes. Perfect. Fun fact, on Saturday morning, Sam's wife reposted a story about the podcast. And I turned to my husband and I was like, so Emily is winning at spousing. Get your shit together. To which he responded, what's the name of your podcast? And I was like, thanks. I'll see myself out.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're over there. And maybe we'll like start asking questions there or something. Yeah. I don't know. I just like talking to the people who listen to this podcast.
Absolutely. All right. Should we dive into the pattern?
Let's do it. I'm excited for this one.
Okay, cool. So as we said at the top, the pattern that we want to pull apart like cheesy bread today is that those who want to disrupt an organization get burnt out and often leave because of the resistance they face within those organizations. And it keeps the org stuck and full of folks who accept the status quo.
Woof.
Woof. Woof.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
What is worth saying about this pattern?
I mean, we encounter these people a lot. So the people who are not satisfied with the way that their operating system is at present are often the people who we meet in client organizations and also in the world, because they are our kindred who are like, let's do things differently. And they also tend to be the ones who are not just quietly, grudgingly, curmudgeonly dissatisfied, but who care enough to try.
Right.
They're the people who not only are principally aligned, but sort of have the wasta to do something about it.
Yeah.
And that's how we get to know them.
Yeah.
And it's like these people are so essential. This archetype is so essential as a provocation in any system to keep it from just getting stuck in a rut, and yet being the provoker in any kind of system, large or small, of any kind. And we should talk more about this because there is no utopia, even at the ready.
Yep.
Is exhausting.
Yeah.
Sharon's mom, I was having dinner with Sharon, one of our colleagues recently, and her mom is a therapist, and her mom said to her very succinctly recently, oh, what you do is professional resistance. And I was like, bro, that is what we do. And she was just saying how burnout in jobs that are situated that way is incredibly high and it's incredibly tiring. And for us, we have a place to go outside of the organization that we're trying to disrupt. But for the people inside of it, they just like live there. That's just in their house where they're trying to do things. And sometimes it changes and it works. And sometimes those people tap out. Right. And I have known more than one executive in my career who has gone to be a professional disruptor more than once, and either the body has rejected the organ and they've gotten pushed out for being too much of an irritant, or they've given up and left. Yeah. And I think we see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I think about this topic, I think there's two different angles to approach it. One is as the individual who is trying to improve the system, like, viewing yourself as instrument, as the tool that is actually changing the system. And, I think there's one way to look at that, which is really an entire episode that we did a few weeks ago around the emotional labor of change work. So this is like an addendum to that, but we may talk more about individual kind of focused approaches to this. But then the other thing is, or the other angle is as a leader or somebody in a position of power in these organizations, and having avenues to change OSs in a more dramatic way than sometimes folks who are not as close to the top have available to them. So I wonder if we can kind of play with both of those lenses as we're talking about this topic, like position of power, changing things so these folks don't leave, being one of those folks who is trying to change things and feeling like you might want to leave as well. And obviously those groups can also be the same as well.
Yeah.
Senior leaders often
I'm
are
curious,
the ones leaving.
Yeah, I'm curious to ask you more about that because having worked at the top of a lot of houses, I am often surprised by how constrained people who have a lot of explicit authority still feel.
Yes.
And so because you brought up the idea of these two lenses, how do you see that lens being different? Like if you're the leader who theoretically holds the keys to a lot of the OS.
Yeah.
Like, what's your damage?
Yeah, I think what I'm realizing is that the person who I'm picturing in my head as the individual in the thing that I said is somebody quite low in the organization or who doesn't have a lot of explicit positional power. We get those questions all the time. How do I start changing things? I don't have control over anything. I can't tell anybody what to do. I don't have a team. So like those folks still, like those are often some of the most engaged with us when we come in and do work, because I think they see a something they can latch onto, and
they see a life raft.
Yeah, exactly, a life raft, and by more of us coming into an organization, we have a position of authority because someone has hired us, and we are a voice that is being paid to exist within an organization. So people do kind of latch on to that. But yeah, the individual can also exist at that most senior level, as you said, and where you would assume that there's a lot of degrees of freedom for those folks. In many cases, there are not. Everybody has a boss, even your boss.
Everybody has a boss. And a lot of times, I think at the very top of the house, the boss is the board and the share price and meeting forecasts, which can be, I think, a lot harder to negotiate with in some ways than if you are a little quote unquote lower in the organization. And you can say to a reasonable boss who's bought into the idea of shaking up the status quo, well, this might take an extra quarter, or look at all of the signals of progress that we've made so far. We just need to keep, we need to keep pouring gas on this thing because it's really working. It's a lot. You can't really talk to Wall Street and be like,
Wall Street don't care.
We're going slow to go fast, guys. Like it just, Wall Street is not listening.
No. Yeah. No, I think that's very true. I think the other thing, another thing worth talking about with this pattern is, I think some of the characteristics that makes somebody want to change an organization is also just the characteristics that you would want in an employee. Like
that's so true.
Someone who gives a shit about how things are going, about the customer experience, about being intolerant of just stupid stuff that's getting in the way. Like you don't have to necessarily have those characteristics to be and directed at an organization's operating system. You can just have those characteristics and be an awesome product manager or awesome marketer or awesome software developer. Tech is the role
awesome
that I just landed on.
Ken.
Tech roles. So what the reason I bring that up is that those are the same folks who are going to go out. They're going to be looking for the exits if it seems like they are not able to just do their job well. So it's not even about keep your org design nerds happy because they're going to leave. It's like keep your highly motivated people who give a shit happy because they will leave, and often they are the same people who care about the OS.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, Sam. And the people who are dissatisfied with the status quo and are willing to engage are the people who are paying attention to how things are getting done and who are applying critical thinking. And often, in my experience, are often the people who are reading about macro trends and paying attention to what other organizations are doing and are a little bit more concerned with the broader environment than just I show up, I sit in 8 hours of meetings, I go home, I forget that place exists. And to your point, it's aren't those the people that we want to keep around?
Yeah.
And as someone who is in a leadership role and is around a lot of leaders, it takes real work on your own ego to listen to people who are perpetually dissatisfied. And I want to talk a little bit about like what I think the move is there, but a lot of times what I see is you have someone who is quite lit up, who is quite informed, who is quite engaged, and who is quite vocal. And I was this person in a big company. Right. And year after year after year, they try to shake things up through, influence and sheer force of will. And eventually they just give up and leave. And the move as a leader is not to be like, tell me about your ideas and I'll just really actively listen, because any smart person who's paying attention knows you're full of shit. And the idea also for leaders is not to explain to them why they're wrong. The idea is really to figure out how to channel that energy and that interest into work that they can do themselves, rather than just lobbing you problems for you to solve. Yeah. But that is predicated on our ability as leaders to not shut down or be irritated by or be worn out by constant dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
And this is something like, I'm going to talk a little bit about, my own moves. This is something I've done a lot of work on for myself in my role at the Ready, because when one leads an organization full of org designers,
well, some people call that
an optimizer.
Hell.
Yeah, it's a fresh Sisyphean hell. It's an organization full of optimizers who are constantly noticing what tensions are present, what could be done differently, what experiments could be done, why haven't they been? And when they are running, then it's like, well, what is the strategy about these experiments? Are we missing? Like, it's a very critically thinking kind of company, and it can be exhausting. Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't feel like there will ever there. It's not that it doesn't feel like that. There will literally never be enough. Like, we will never do enough for people to go, the OS is dialed. Right. I said to a client I was talking to last night, hi, Mike, that like, I feel like my job is getting to the top of a hill and being like, I am worn out, and realizing that from there I can just see a taller hill and be like, cool. Well, cool. Next hill.
Yeah. And we're very comfortable telling clients that. Like, I have said many a time, like, there's not an end state that we're getting to. We're just adopting this muscle, and, this is just how we are now. But I sometimes think we lose that when we look at ourselves and we're like, we are not there yet. We have not become the thing yet. As if there is a thing for us to become.
As if there is a point at which people will be satisfied, which the genetic material of people who are as motivated and smart and curious as everyone who works at a place like the Ready and everyone we're talking about in our client organizations is they'll never be satisfied.
Right.
My husband jokes, have I ever told you Ed's tagline for the Ready?
No.
Whenever I'm complaining about something, he goes, the Ready, where everything's fine and nobody's happy.
Yeah, there's a lot of accuracy in that.
But that is the DNA, and that's how these people are going to show up in your organization, as people who are a little pokey, a little dissatisfied, a little provocative, a little judgy, but also really invested and engaged and curious and thoughtful and willing to help. And if you want to have an organization that evolves, you got to take both of those energies together. You don't get to pick just one of them.
Yeah, you need that injection of energy. Otherwise, I think organizations kind of follow the same path as any other system that doesn't have injections of energy, which is entropy just increases. And if entropy just increases forever, you eventually get the heat death of the universe, or in this case, of an organization. There's no variation in the ability to be able to do any work. So we need that injection in order to continue evolving as an organization. Otherwise, we just become static.
Yeah. I mean, it's that whole, I've talked to and referenced the articles about, the maze and the mouse, and how the maze becomes part of the mouse 1 million times. But, when you don't have the kind of talent that continues to think critically and question formal structures and hierarchical decisions, you end up with mediocrity. You end up with a lot of people whose entire role is keeping things, maintaining things the way that they are, and not without an eye toward whether that's good,
Right.
without an eye toward
Comfort.
whether the status quo is good.
Yeah,
or
exactly. It's not about status quo being good or bad. It's about comfort. It's about not being pulled or pushed too far in any direction outside of equilibrium. I'm
100%.
wondering, so does this mean then that, for someone who is listening to this episode and they are self-identifying as that type of person, does that mean that you just, fight that fight forever? Or how do you know, I guess, when you have hit the point of, I can't stay here and continue to do this. I'm seeing enough signals that I am just going to continue pushing this boulder up the hill or hitting my head against this rock. Like, what are you looking for there? How do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I have the same question for you. I had a conversation with a client who was no longer my client at the time last summer that I remember very clearly. She was saying to me that she was like, you should write a whole book that's just telling leaders when to give up.
Yeah.
And we had this very interesting conversation about what the markers are in an organization that you lead a part of, that the conditions are there to keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
And when you should either shut up and color or get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
And I think when you're in it, it's very hard to tell. It's very hard to tell. And I know from 1 million client projects that it always feels worse before it gets better. And there is often a tipping point. And I find that tipping point quite difficult to predict in a group. But often there's just a week that you show up to a client project and all of a sudden the resistance is down. And it's like, I don't know if you all did ayahuasca over the weekend or what happened here, but like you were like this on Friday and now it's Monday and it seems like a whole new bag. What's the deal?
Yeah.
So it's like, I often don't find the progress to be linear or predictable or gradual in any way. And if you don't see some of those tipping points, you can't just keep going forever.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no easy answers here because there's so much individual variance in like toleration for pain or like kind of keep doing the same thing. I mean, even just life situation. Like how much do you need that paycheck? Who is relying on you? I think your tolerance for bullshit probably goes way up when you've got folks who are relying on you to not lose your job because you got mad at your boss because the OS isn't changing enough.
Right.
But yeah, it's a really interesting thought experiment. I mean, where my head is going is there's a difference between continually coming up against the same problem versus continually coming up against problems of equal or greater frustration, but at least they are different because we are either making progress on the other stuff or like we can acknowledge that is a thing and also let's work on this other thing. As long as there is movement in that way, I think I personally would be more inclined to stick around because I would feel like we are uncovering more and new things and not just me bringing the same thing every week and being like, remember this thing? And just being told to go color.
Yeah. I think that's right. And I think that there's two things that I'd be looking for if I was an individual change agent or a leader trying to shift things in my organization. One would be, are we continually finding ourselves with a higher class of problems? Because there will always be problems. You will never be done. But I notice both internally and in client projects, usually the way that I measure progress is this a better problem than the problem we were solving this time last year? And like, I see this in client projects, like a project that I'm involved in right now. When it began, there was so little role clarity in a very large cross-functional team that the idea of real prioritization, when there wasn't even clarity of who actually owned what bits of work, was the focus. Now they've got like a whole prioritization thing that needs to be sorted out. But I'm like, this is a better class of problem for you to have than the one that you...
I'm trying to come up with like, what is that? How do you can tell is a problem better or not? Is it like there's more complexity to the problem, or it's like, I don't know, like, do you have a criteria in mind for deciding whether or not we're getting to better levels of problem?
I think the simplest thing is, do we have an issue now because we solved something else? Did we do work that was the prerequisite to this?
Okay, so we had to do step 0 before we could do step 1, and step 1 before we could get to step 4, and we're on step 4 now. So great, yeah. As opposed to doing a bunch of step 0 stuff that never progresses to step 1 or beyond.
That's a good way to think about it, because we see that too, and I think we used to fall victim to this at the Ready. I've seen it in clients where it's like scattershot, where it's just like, we're going to do 100 experiments and hope for the best and hope one of them like pops and then we scale it. I prefer the land of org design where it is a little bit more concerted, like we are building on past progress, and we are addressing the new tensions that we have created based on actual impact. And then the other thing that I was going to say in terms of signal for particularly leaders, because I've known a few who have left things. And when I did executive coaching, I had a couple of clients who knew each other start to call me the Black Widow, because they were like, if you work with her, you'll quit your job. Which is not great marketing, incidentally, if the company is paying you. But I wasn't convincing them to leave their jobs. I was just doing the job of being like, holding up the mirror and being like, what do you want here, man? Anyway, the point being, the thing that I see often before somebody great who's a leader quits is their boss being unwilling to really engage in the specifics of the conversation. So, there are other signals, like if they stop, trying to fund things or giving you headcount or giving you the authority or giving you the freedom or asking for too many status reports. Like there's a bunch of other stuff. But what I have seen when a layer up in a big transformation loses interest or loses conviction is that they also stop really engaging in what the work is and start to get very hand wavy. And when our client, who's a leader, is going to them to say like, okay, well, we would need to make these kind of structural changes, or we really need to look at this method of budgeting this year if we want these cross-functional things to happen. And they're kind of like, I don't really think that we need to change that. Can't you just kind of like keep it going? As like, you can see when somebody's eyes glaze over and when they start to zone out. And if you're the person with the transformation agenda and that person with the glazed over eyes is your boss,
right, you
might have a problem.
Right. Yeah, it's basically the lack of curiosity. Because like a curiosity that if you're really engaging with your curiosity, you can still be critical, you can still be skeptical and still retain this base of like open-mindedness. And I think when that glimmer of curiosity starts to fade from people who have positional authority over you, that's when my alarm bells would be going off.
Yeah, that's when we're in trouble. And you even wrote a note here about, how working, in the worst case scenarios, actually working on the organization is seen as a distraction. Yeah. When I see the air cover disengage, they start to say things like that. Like, how much more of this stuff do we really need to do? Or like, how long is this org design work gonna go on? And they're not talking about the Ready. They're not talking about our engagement. They're talking about like, how long is this leader going to be distracted from their day job by trying to get their organization working properly?
Right. Yeah. And that is just...
That's not a good sign.
Not a good sign, because that is a true bifurcation of working on the org and
Yes.
working in the org. And sometimes we create that bifurcation to make it clear what we are doing, but ultimately they need to be united. And that's a bad sign.
It's a bad sign. Yeah. Is there anything we didn't talk about in terms of this pattern of people kind of trying to climb the hill and then ultimately tapping out and walking back to base camp?
And I think it's just worth saying out loud that it is often easier to operate within a bad operating system than it is to fundamentally change it. Obviously, you are expending a lot of energy and frustration existing within a bad OS, especially if you have kind of woken up to the fact that it is a bad OS, because you see the frustrations everywhere in a new and fun way, fun in air quotes there. But even in that case, it can be easier to just exist there than actually fundamentally change it. And I think that's another one of those signs too, that if you feel like you have lost the will to kind of push up against the things that you have seen that could just obviously be better, that is definitely maybe the ultimate sign that, I can either, because actually the decision is not to leave or not, it's I can decide to leave, or I should just decide to stay and be okay within that reality.
Do you think that people can really do that?
I don't want to speak for, but I don't think I could do that. I think that there are contextual reasons why somebody may decide that, you know what, I actually don't need to have certain needs fulfilled by my job. I am going to seek that in other places. This is stable. This pays me well. And I'm good with that. And I'm going to stay in my lane and just kind of do that and seek meaning and autonomy and those other things that we know human beings really want in other places. And I really try to keep an open mind around that because it's not me. Like I would never do that. But I also don't want to center my own preferences in conversations like this that kind of erases that way of being within organizations too.
Yeah. I totally take your point. And probably my data set is really skewed because I tend, if you're working with me as a coach back when I did that all the time, you're probably a high performer.
Yeah.
And I ask you that question because it would take more than one hand to count the number of situations I have been in with a friend or a coaching client where they have resigned themselves to, I'm just going to keep my head down and live with it and get a paycheck for reasons.
Yeah.
And they can't do it forever.
Yeah.
Like they get to a point in the conversation where they quote unquote give up. And then it's not that many months before they're all fired up again.
Totally.
And I'm just not sure that people who are the kind of people who see what needs to change and feel really motivated to make that change can then also stay in a place where they can't do it. I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to this. And again, limited data set, but it's almost like I don't know if once people can see through the matrix, they can just ignore it forever.
Yeah. I think you're probably right for most folks. Definitely for me.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe this will be an Instagram conversation for us because I want to hear from someone who's made the decision to just stop caring, who actually was able to.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
I don't know. I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're out there.
Shall we shift into what works instead?
We shall. Okay, so we've talked about the pattern of people who really want to shake things up, not being able to, and then what happens to them. Mm-hmm. What ideas do you have for those people? Particularly because I would say in the years that I've been doing this podcast, the number one theme of the questions we get is how do I? I'm a person on the beach screaming at the ocean. How do I stay here without getting washed away? Yeah. So what you got for him, Sam?
All right. So the first thing that I have is this is particularly from a sort of leader POV. And when I say leader, I mean like positional leader, someone who has the authority to put money against something. Because the really nice thing about this is that super talented people, like the folks that we've been talking about, they're actually really easy to engage. You give them a problem to go pursue and solve, and the autonomy to actually do it. So the first place that I would recommend is, can we use the idea of a mission-based team to give folks who fall within this demographic the sandbox to go solve some of the things that they are seeing. So spinning up a team, pointing them in a direction, I think goes a long way to giving people, ways to create their own engagement in the work.
I love that. I think that's really great. And just giving them a space where they can behave in the way that they would like the rest of the organization to behave, it can be really refreshing.
Yeah, totally. And there's obviously ways to do this poorly. One would be giving them a sandbox that is not connected to the other parts of the organization. Like, hey, you disruptive people, go play with your blocks over here.
You go outside.
You go do a thing and maybe write a report and give it to us.
Right.
Instead, obviously the better way forward would be having the work that they do in the MBTs actually show up and be metabolized by the organization itself. But there's lots of different ways for that to look.
I love that.
What do you got?
My first idea is going to speak more to the individual change agents out there. And I would include in this all of the practitioners who listen to this show, who are, anyone who is doing resistance work professionally inside an organization or for other organizations. I think you have to take your self-care quite seriously. And I am a little eye-rolly, to be frank, about the way that self-care is discussed in the popular culture. But for people who do what we do, you can quite easily not only burn out, but I think it's quite easy to start to lose your one's connection to values, to identity, to self-confidence. I've seen a lot of people who do this work, I am included in this, really get the yips at some points in their career where they're like, do I even know what I'm doing? Because effectively you're signing up to be professionally gaslit every day of your life.
Yeah.
Like, you are signing up to go to a place where people tell you that you're crazy.
Yeah.
And that's the job.
Yeah.
And so if we don't have ways of re-anchoring to our own identity and not to our rightness, but just to reground ourselves, it's quite challenging to be stalwart in systems that are pushing back. Yeah. And so I think that, I'm not a big proponent or fan of like prescriptions around what kind of self-care is necessary. And I've also learned for myself through a lot of experimentation over time that what's the most important is paying attention to what I need right now and for this period of time. I used to really fall into the trap of like, I need to learn to meditate and meditate every day until I'm 100, like Rick Rubin, who, P.S. Rick Rubin, I'm obsessed with you. But what I've learned is that like, there are periods in my life where what is more important is that I am focused on playing music, or what is more important. Like last year I went through like a very intense arc of EMDR therapy. I was like, there is a thing that I need to get through, and this is the way. I say these things, I've worked with various coaches at various points. I've gotten super serious about yoga or other things at different times. And the idea here isn't, just try everything. And the idea isn't, you will not be consistent. I will not be consistent. None of us are consistent as instruments in this work of resistance, which means the things that we need to keep our instrument tuned and playable are going to shift over time. Yeah. And so I think the work that we all have to do is to pay attention to what we need now and do it. And then also to not have the whatever self-care methods become another thing that is ours to maintain rather than something that is supportive of the work we're trying to do in the world.
Right. Yeah. You should be very aware of whether you feel like you're doing your self-care wrong. And at that point, it's probably has lost the self-care kind of angle and has just become another requirement, another commitment.
Exactly. I was at a point a couple of years ago where I was getting massages regularly because of some work-related stress stuff. And I was finding that it was like very irritating to me when I had to go. And I was like, I need to stop going. This is not...
Yeah.
The point of a massage is not that is another thing in my day that is frustrating to me. I need to find something else that gets this job done. So jobs to be done in order to resist, think about them, experiment with them, and don't have it be another thing you have to do.
Yeah, I love that. All right, I got another one here. I think this is kind of a mix of individual and leader point of view, which is just this idea that small annoyances fixed consistently can give folks like the ones we are talking about what they are looking for and actually make huge impact on an organization. So I'm talking about friction points in the employee experience that are really easy to ignore or just say like, well, I only have to do that once a year, so I'm not going to like worry about that. These types of things are actually like perfect for improving and is a really productive channel for that energy to go. Because I think sometimes folks like us, let's say you and I are in an incredibly bureaucratic organization, seeing how everything is broken. If we are not particularly, and it's not a matter of being, I guess, experienced or not, but if we decide like, hey, our structure is whack, or this huge, big authority thing needs to be rethought, or there are like big moves that are obvious that folks will latch onto as like the thing we need to go do. And as we know in this work, very rarely, if ever, do we start with something like structure because it's messy and incredibly visible and creates a bunch of swirl. But internal folks don't necessarily know that. So if I am in a leadership position and I am having and I'm noticing that there's a bunch of this energy in the organization, I would be directing people to smaller things that will actually improve their day-to-day life at the organization. And the example that I'm sitting with is something from a client project a couple of years ago where everybody who was not on the C-suite in this organization had really crappy computers that were slow and horrible to use. And everybody was always just kind of like complaining about how bad their tools were. Everybody on the C-suite had a MacBook Pro. And the idea that their computers might be getting in the way of people doing the best work of their lives had not even crossed their mind. And I think they poo-pooed it when they heard kind of rumblings of that because they didn't even really realize that they were using a tool that was far and away better than everybody else's. So maybe that's actually an example of a big thing. I don't know, but it is an example of like a little friction that can be addressed over time.
I love that. It's an example like that is such a good one where it's just like these small things, but they signal something really important to people, which is like, it doesn't matter to you, leader, that I don't have the tools I need to do my job properly. And you do.
Yeah, totally. And, maybe, I think there's something here like the move to get everybody a MacBook Pro. That's probably not it. But if I'm a leader on that C-suite, give me the same laptop that everybody else has. And I will start putting things in through the customer help desk to get help with things. I bet you things will start to improve at least a little bit. But
won't be long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. That's so cool. My last one is more focused on the leader thing. And this is advice that I have given people who work with me on Source as well, which is if you are doing impactful OS work, 50% of the people will be mad 100% of the time. And it's just like, if you are doing org design and you are making real change to any part of the operating system, the easiest thing to do is something down the line that everybody can sign up for. And it's not the best thing to do. And so I really try, and I really encourage my clients to try to sink into the work itself, the craft itself. If you're redesigning performance management, which we have a couple of clients going through right now, like, engage with the problem space, engage with the possibilities, engage with the practices and with the writing about it and with the talking about it. Stay in the local present tension rather than orienting to the future macro tension, because it's very easy when you're trying to do provocative org design, and any modern org design, I should just say, will be provocative because it is provoking 100 years of broken ass tradition. So it's all provocative, even if it's not the edgiest stuff ever. When you are trying to do that kind of design, it's super, super easy to start to think about how people are likely to respond, what the possible downsides will be, who is going to be upset, whose cheese is going to get moved and is going to give you a hard time, and spending a lot of time. I'm not saying, don't consider consequences, but in spending a lot of time in the anxiety of the worst case scenario is a really surefire way to lose motivation in terms of trying to make healthy change. And the truth is that even though 50% of the people will be mad 100% of the time, 100% of them will get over it. Mm-hmm. And that's just the truth. Like, every major change that I've seen any organization make, people, sometimes, you look at like a base camp moment or a couple of these big moments where there has been like scandal and like, sure, a few, sometimes some people leave and there's like a big catastrophe like that. But those are pretty edge casey. Most of the time when there is a new change to the operating system, you don't see mass exodus. A lot of times there is some noise for a period of time as people learn about the new reality. And then once they settle into it and realize like their life hasn't materially changed, the sky hasn't fallen, et cetera, people get over it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, stay in the work, stay in the job to be done rather than the surrounding forces, or you'll never get the job done.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. The phrase that's coming to mind for me as I listen to you is time is an underrated ally in this work often. Things get
so true.
Things tend to be less intense over time. So if you're willing to sit in the intensity in the short term, that's often where the real value is.
Yeah, I think that's such a good place to close. Closing round question. What did you notice today?
Like with every topic that we talk about, we start with something that seems very simple. And when you threw out the idea a couple of days ago, I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I know my 3 talking points for that. And inevitably, it opens in a fractal way, in a complex way to conversations that I did not even think we were going to have today. So just appreciating that as my noticing.
Nice. I think for me, when I was reading the research that Jack put together, so much of it was about employees' sense of purpose and alignment to purpose, and that living their purpose is how you keep people. And I really felt myself, as we were having this conversation, put that to the side and be like, I think the way we engage people is by engaging them in work and in craft and in mastery and in their ability to do something impactful. And maybe that has to do with purpose, but I think it's actually a little bit different. I think it's more contribution flavored than organizational purpose flavored. And to me, that feels more resonant as a change agent anywhere trying to stick in it.
Really appreciate you saying that, because it put something it makes something a little bit clear that I think I was sitting with, which is that it's not really about purpose necessarily. I think people just want to be a part of systems that work. Like they want to like feel like they are contributing to a thing that actually functions and not just pouring energy into some sort of like bureaucracy black hole. Like that is the truly like most like meaningless experience that I think people are trying to avoid and then reacting against when they start to sense it happening.
So true.
Org design. It matters more than you think.
Look at us go. It's like we could make a whole podcast about it.
We're always looking for new topics for the show. So if you have an organizational pattern that you're having trouble changing, shoot us a note at podcast@theready.com. DM us on Instagram, maybe. There's so many places to give us ideas.
Find us and follow us, and also review us and smash that like button. This show was engineered by Taylor Marvin and produced by the wonderful Jack Van Amberg. At Work with the Ready is created by The Ready, where we help organizations around the world change the way they work. Thank you for listening to us.
That was a little bonus for the viewers only.
You stop it.
Only the video people were going to see that.
Oh, that you were giving them spirit fingers?
Yes.
Just for the YouTube friends?
Yeah.
Nice.